Hey there, welcome to Board Game Hot Takes. My name's Tim.
And this is Chris.
This is Adam.
And today we're going to be looking at our top games of all time. This is going to be numbers 21 through 30. If you're interested in checking out more of these lists, last week we did numbers 31 through 40, as well as a bonus Patreon episode of 41 through 50. So over the next couple of weeks, we'll be finishing out this series. But tonight you're going to hear 10 games from each of us, our top 21 to 30 games of all time. Now, we described how we got to these lists, how we picked the games on these lists all at the beginning of last week's episode. So if you're interested in that and you haven't heard it yet, go back and check that one out. We're going to jump right into our list today. Let's start with number 30.
All right. Well, number 30 of the best games of all time right now is Wolves, designed by Connor Alexander and published by Coyote and Crow Games. This is a new one on my list this year. This is one we hadn't played before, but we actually did a review episode a few months back on this game. And ever since we played it, it has been on my mind all the time. Also, it doesn't hurt that I got my physical copy of this from the crowdfunding campaign, and I'm dying to get it played. This is a super unique game because it does some things that I've never seen in a game before. Just for example, it's a semi-co-op, and nobody wins unless everybody wins. So everybody has to survive in this game, but there is still a winner. So one of the ways that you can get to be the big winner is by gifting resources to the other players. And so there's both a benefit to yourself for getting points related to that gifting, but there's also benefit to the other players because then they get something that they need. So it actually is a really interesting dynamic, a really interesting economy in this game. And it had a dynamic that I hadn't seen in any other game. And the production on this thing is quite lovely. It's fairly simple. The one thing that I did have a complaint about was that they didn't add more special art than they had in the pre-release version that we played on Tabletop Simulator. But what they did put in this box is very pretty. All cardboard and wood, no plastic in this thing. So lovely. I want to get it played, and I want to experience this cool and unique game again.
Yeah, I'd like to try this one again as well. Chris, it's you said we played it recently. I think it's been like a year or something.
Like a year, yeah.
Has it been that long?
Yeah, it's been a while. So I remember a little bit about the if you're like in last place, you can force trades on the people that are ahead of you or something like that. So that was pretty unique. And then, yeah, I like this whole thing where one person could decide that someone's going to die and then everybody dies. So are they going to do it, or are they going to play ball and help everybody out to survive? So that's kind of a neat little statement there with Wolves.
It was definitely a neat game. I think when we reviewed it, I said at the time I wouldn't request to play it, and I think that probably still holds up. I'm not super excited to go back to it, but I wouldn't mind revisiting it. I think it's going to be very group dependent and play dependent, and
yeah.
So I'm not sure how it'll hold up, but it's cool to see it on the list here.
It definitely is best with a group like ours, where I think everybody's going to play to the best of their ability and kind of in good faith, because that is the one big killer I could see in this one, is if you had the kind of person who's like, I'm losing anyway, you're all going down with me. That would not be fun.
It's like the old personality test, right? Like, oh, well,
yeah.
You know who the jerk is, who's not going to fit in our society, you're out. Up next for me, well, anyway, that takes place up in the Canadian tundra, I believe, where you won't find any tauntauns, but you will find tauntauns in Star Wars Rebellion. Actually, I don't think there's any
That's a
tauntauns
transition.
in Star Wars Rebellion.
Nicely done, Adam.
I tried my best. Star Wars Rebellion is designed by Corey Konieczka and Fantasy Flight Games. This is one I had a chance to play recently with my dad. He's my normal sparring partner for Star Wars Rebellion, and this time the dice just weren't in his favor at all. So I don't know, halfway through or 3/4 of the way through, he says, nah, I quit. I'm out. We're done with this game. So we packed it up. So it's fallen a little bit. This game can be great, I think, with two players who know the game well and can sort of get the advanced sparring going on. What's great here in Rebellion, you have the bad guys, the Empire, and the Rebellion trying to hide their base from the bad guys who have all the ships and all the power at the beginning of the game. Rebellion's just trying to hang on and make it to the end, accomplish some annoying, pesky little missions against the Empire to move that tracker so that the round tracker and I forget what it's called, prestige track or something like that for the Rebellion meet, and that's how the Rebellion win if they do that before the Empire finds their base. So some neat cat and mouse in the Star Wars universe, all these great ships and minis and things that everybody from our age group, most everybody from our age group, is relatively familiar with. Still have a lot of fun playing Star Wars Rebellion, my number 30 game of all time ever for, today.
It's an absolutely epic game, a 2-player game especially. It's got so many cool things going on.
Yeah, a great game. I wish I'd played it more often. I've actually got a copy of it, and I've only played it, I don't know, maybe 3-4 times, always with Tim. Always a huge loss for me, but I always had a great time playing it.
Well, my number 30 it's got to be my favorite designer now. I know we did a top 5 favorite designers episode, and he wasn't on my list because I think Chris had him on his list, but this is a Simone Luciani game, co-designed with Virginia Gigli, and the game is Grand Austria Hotel. It's a game I just finally got introduced to about 6 months or so ago. I've got a local group and played it with them. Absolutely streamlined, brilliant little game. The theme of it is that you're running a hotel and you're trying to make your guests the happiest. And so basically what's going to happen is that there's this card draft, and you can kind of take these guests, you put them in your hotel, and then you need to feed them. They all have different requirements as far as the type of food they want. Do they want strudel or coffee or wine? And then if you feed them, then you can put them up in a hotel room. It has to match the color they're in, and you get some bonuses. But there's an order of things. The action selection is basically a dice draft. So a bunch of dice get rolled at the beginning of the round. You put dice into the columns that match them. And then each time you draft one of those actions, the action gets weaker for the next person if there's less dice there. So it's a very interesting snake draft situation going on here. But it plays quick. It's very streamlined rounds. They go so quick. And I played a ton of this on Yukata since playing it in person. So got a chance to really cement some of the concepts. I like it. It's got a very punishing, kind of like a feed your people thing, but there's this emperor track you have to move up, and you're usually going to move up it by either one of the dice you can draft, or some of the guests will give you that benefit when you feed them or when you put them in their rooms. And if you don't get to a certain point on that track at the end of the first round, then you take some big negative. But if you do get to over a threshold, then you get some big positive. So it's a very challenging puzzle aside from just trying to take care of your guests. Weird theme. It suffers from the Clemens Front artwork for sure, as always. But this is a great game, plays quick, easy to teach, and I really liked it. I'd say the one other negative about it is that the snake draft of it means that the first person who goes, they'll take a turn, then the second person, then the third person will take 2 turns, and vice versa. And so if you're the first person, you won't get another turn for, you'll basically get the first and 6th turn of the game. So there's a lot of downtime. I only played it at 3. I would not want to play this at 4. So I think that's a disadvantage, but I have played it at 2 as well on Yukata, and that plays pretty well. So 2 or 3 players, this is solid at, but a very fun game. And kind of surprised it made it this high when I went through the Pub Meeple rankings, and this showed up this high because I wanted to be playing it over so many other games. I think you guys would dig this one. It's a pretty interesting one. It doesn't do things quite like anything else I've played, even by some of these great designers.
So Clemens Franz artwork notwithstanding, I really would have played this one, Tim. This is also one of my favorite designers, Simone Luciani, and so I want to play basically everything that he's designed. And this one, the theme seems a little bit odd, but I definitely want to give this one a shot. In fact, I think this was on one of my want to play lists over the past couple of years.
I think it was on your most recent one because I want to play it too, and I agreed with you, Chris, for wanting to play this one. Yeah, it does walk that Clemens Franz tightrope between heinous and charming, mostly heinous, but this one looks fun to me. I don't know why. For whatever reason, I've been wanting to play this one. Hearing good things, and hearing you bring it up, Tim, makes me want to play even more. So let's give this one a shot.
I keep saying that we've got so many games we're going to try to get played at BGG Con. This would be another one because I at least can mostly teach it without having to recheck the rules or anything like that. So I think we're going to run out of time, but hopefully we can fit this one in too.
Well, let's roll on down to number 29, which for me is a game that I've had in my collection for going on years now. I think I got it in 2020 when we were in the midst of the pandemic, and it's just now starting to jump up my rankings. And I think it's one that you guys are going to agree is a really good choice as well. And that is Godspeed, designed by Clayton Hargrave and Adam Hill and published by Pandasaurus Games. This is a worker placement game. It seems like it should be fairly dry from the actions that you're taking, but there's actually a number of steps in this game that make it really interesting and unique. You start with a bid essentially on getting supplies that are dropped to you on an alien planet where you're trying to colonize. And you also have to decide whether or not you're going to use some of your precious resources, your personnel resources, in order to fulfill some kind of goal where if everybody pitches in and the goal gets accomplished, everybody gets a benefit. But if you don't, you get to keep those resources, but you get some kind of a detriment as well. So just little things like that make this game a pretty unique play. It's also got a great production, and I think one of the coolest themes of any space game, pretty unique, it's the idea that the space race was fake and that we were really colonizing a planet through a wormhole in the inner side of the universe, and that we weren't actually going to the moon. Nobody really cared about the moon, but that's what we were selling to everybody. So it's a cool theme, really neat, kind of retro-futuristic, great graphics, and a really interesting play style. This is a game that I'm really looking forward to getting to again and again, even though it took me a while to really catch on at how good it was. That's Godspeed.
Chris, is a great pick. This is upcoming on my list tonight, so I'll say some things about it. Kind of a Wolves light when you have that event that's revealed, and are you going to contribute or not? You get to see who is the jerk and not going to contribute. But it makes sense strategically sometimes to not put your captain or whatever it is in there, because you need to save them for that worker placement area later in the round. So that part's pretty neat. I think that's my favorite part is, well, that's not one of my favorite parts. And then did you mention the auction part where you're selecting maybe 2 or 3 of your characters that you're going to bid for these cards, including round turn order for that round itself, I think.
Yeah.
So that's a neat mechanism too. This one keeps getting better with time. One that I've overlooked for a long time, but we were like, yeah, let's play that one. And we had that recent play wherever it was, Big Bear, we played this one, and I thought it was fantastic. So, and your production doesn't hurt it at all. It's a beautiful production that you have, Chris, all those bits and chunky, clunky things. And like you said, the art is fantastic for Godspeed.
Right after we played in Big Bear, I got a chance to play this about a week later with a friend who had picked up a retail copy of it. And I got to say, it's not, even though Chris's production is, nice, it's pretty nice anyway. Like, it still has those little crystal statues, even in the retail version. It's just the tokens are cardboard, but they're nicely illustrated and everything. So I thought it actually worked just fine. But it did remind me of the one thing that I think kind of had put me off it for a while, and that is back-to-back plays like that. It gets a little redundant. So I'd say, get back to this one every 6 months, once a year. You're going to love it. It was I loved that play in Big Bear, and still had fun with it on the second play. Just got a little bit redundant, but yeah, this is a fun game. I think very underappreciated. I think more people should check it out, and it's you can find it in bargain bins. I find it pretty discounted often.
Yeah. All right, up next for me is Blood Rage. This is by Eric Lang and Simon or Come On Games. And I have a sense that this one is falling down a little bit for me, but again, not because I don't dislike the game or anything. We've played it a ton. We're getting tons of plays in on Board Game Arena, especially, and it's just a fantastic area control game. You've got the draft at the beginning of every round where you're kind of developing your strategy and how are all these cards going to work together. Oh man, I have this boat card. I don't want this boat card. I'll let Tim take that one and let his boat die and get a lot of points for that. Who wants to do that? Or am I going to go for this losing strategy where, the more my guys get wasted, the more points I get? I've never been able to pull that one off. So that's something still to explore. I always try to go for the middle. We've been playing with Mark MC. I don't know his real name, but he keeps kicking our butt now at Blood Rage lately. So that's igniting my fire. How can I beat this guy who's come out of nowhere and make me look the fool at Blood Rage, a game I love. Number 29 on my list. Blood Rage.
That fool that you're talking about is my local friend Mark that destroys me at every game I play with him on Board Game Arena. Somehow I managed to hold my own when we play in person a little bit better, but yeah, he's pretty good at games. We can't let him have this win though. This game, someone else has got to take it. Show him he's bragging about this all the time. So you guys got to take him down.
Yeah, I think you were
taking us down.
Yeah, I think you were saying this is the one game that you could beat him at. It was like his 10-point.
That's right.
Yeah, his 10-point game, and then he learned how to play the game, and now he's crushing all of us.
Yeah. Dang it, Mark. Anyway, I'll ride that Eric Lang train with Rising Sun, which is my number 29. And Adam, I think, had mentioned it last week, but I really like Rising Sun. I think it's a fantastic game. I think it's one of my favorite of these big area troops on a map, area control games. Eric Ling just puts the cleverest mechanisms. His combat mechanism here, I think, is really stand out. But there's a wonderful way to kind of get different upgrades every game or different monsters to go into combat with. So love Rising Sun. Fantastic production, fantastic gameplay. Always have fun playing this.
Great game. It's a great game that I don't like very much, but it is a great game nonetheless. I said it before, I'll say it again. I wish I liked this game more than I do. I recognize its beauty. I just can't enjoy it because I suck at it.
I don't know if I mentioned it when I talked about it I think it was last week I talked about it. The combat phase of this, where you have the coins, you're sort of betting, and the person who, puts the most coins in that little area gets to execute first or gets to do that action, kind of wins it. So the way that whole dynamic works out, and the way the loser of the battle, I think the loser of the battle gets to collect the coins, and you can kind of sacrifice your guys ahead of time. So just that phase of it, I think the way that is designed is pretty exquisite. Nice job, Eric Lang. Seems like you know what you're doing when you're designing board games.
All right. Getting down to number 28. This is a game, it's one of the few games that is on my list from last year and barely moved at all. It moved a couple places only. It's Yokohama, designed by Hisashi Hayashi and published by Tasty Minstrel Games. This is a game that shocked me how much I liked it. I was surprised. We played this in Sedona, I think. And Tim taught it to us. He was kind of selling it pretty hard. This is one of the games that you guys did an episode on without me. I was out of town when you guys were recording this. I think it was a little over a year ago, maybe a year and a half. And I was like, I'm glad I wasn't there for that one, because that sounds like a super dry resource management game, not that interested. But then, bam, we played it, and I absolutely loved it. I thought that the action mechanism was pretty cool, placing your characters out and having to move your character around the board, which is a series of cards, and then put out workers as you move around those different spots. And then the number of workers that you put on a given spot was what dictated the strength of your action. But having the limitation where, I forget, what's the name of your main character there? Your big meeple.
Your president.
Your president, yes, your president. As you're moving your president around Yokohama, they can't go to a place where there's somebody else's president, so people can block you out from those spaces, and you can't double up unless you got a special card, which I always like to get, because then you can do all kinds of crazy things. But this is a super fun game, super satisfying. A few moves that you can get where you're buying things from the market that just give you these great beneficial actions. There's so many things happening in this game that just feel so deeply satisfying. And you put on top of that, for a game based on cards and not a board, a very pleasant production, nice artwork, colorful, enjoyable, a great game. I'm looking forward to playing this one again sometime soon.
Chris, this is a game. I'm not saying it's a bad game, all right? I'm not saying it's a bad game. This is one, it stretches you in so many different directions. You got to go to like a church or something. You have to go to there, and then you have to try to get all these different resources, and you're trying to go this side of the board or this side of the board, and you're getting blocked 500 times in the way. So when I'm playing this one, I tend to get frustrated a lot. I never feel like I can do any, 5,000 things I need to do, and everyone else is doing it just fine with no problem. So I'm just, how do people do that? And am I dumb? What's wrong with my life? How come I don't have any friends? So I started thinking about all these things when I'm playing Yokohama. It doesn't give me the best feeling when I'm doing this one, but I think Tim likes it.
I do like it. Yeah, I'm looking at my list, and it's not on here. I'm pretty sure it was in my rankings, though. I remember ranking it against other things. So it clearly has fallen a little bit for me because it didn't make my top 50. But I think it's a fantastic game. I played a lot. There's a new production of this coming out, which I do, like Chris said. I think the current production is really charming, the kind of little cartoony, stylized artwork that's on there. The new production, the box cover looks beautiful, and I don't know what that's going to mean for the components and the artwork inside the box now. I expect it's going to look a lot different, and could be good, could be worse. But in any case, this is a very interesting game. And when I was just thinking, I should teach my wife this game. I think that it's straightforward enough. She'd get into it pretty quickly, and she might dig it. So I'm probably going to be trying that one with her pretty soon.
All right. My number 28 game is Beyond the Sun. This is one we talk about a lot. Dennis K. Chan and published by Rio Grande Games. The production here is a little goofy, but you know what? I like it. Now I find it enduring. You got these big white tech tree, you know, the cards are white and there's no pictures on them, just a bunch of text, but the text is cool enough because you get to do all these powerful things with each of these texts that come up. And are you going to try to combine that with some other actions? These texts are just actions where you're going to move your pawn. And so you want to combine that with maybe a couple of different actions that you've revealed for yourself so you can progress onward, get the most points, link together these different things. It's been fun to try to get 2 of these level 4 technologies that give you a handful of points at the end of the game. Then you've got the colonization board, the planet board. You're trying to jump around there and maneuver so that you have this, it's a little bit of area control, area majority, but it's not too harsh. You're bumping people out. You're getting them benefit right away. Somebody can bump you back out and do the same thing to you and get that benefit once they take control. Or you're going to try to seize the moment over there and colonize that planet, get its little benefit. So some nice choices, a very streamlined way of playing this game with that action mechanism. You just move your thing from here to here, and that's what you do. And then what else? The scoring, the little scoring criteria, the in-game, the way you, achievements, I think they're called, the way that executes and is sort of the timer for the game. It's just a pleasant, nice game. The economy is cool here too, the way you're using these dice. Finally, dice that are used in a cool kind of way where it's just you have a resource on one side. I don't know what it is. It's a block, so it could be a person or a ship from 1 to 4. So that's your 6 faces: a block, a dude, or a ship from 1 to 4. What a great way to use the dice. You don't have to worry about trying to buy yourself an orphanage and put it on this castle in the middle of France or anything like that. I'm using this for space flight, so that's cool. Beyond the Sun, my number 28 game. I think it's fantastic.
Well, you've already heard it on my list, at least if you're a Patreon supporter, you did. But I like this game a lot. And you were talking about the economy, and it reminded me, I think that's why I didn't like my first play of it, because the economy is quirky and it's very punishing. If you don't find a way to start to, build up some of the, basically, if you're not pulling the resource, the tracks, the food or the population tokens off your track, you just don't have access to many crates, and you can use them up. And that really stuck me on my first play. And as I got better and better at it, I found it a lot less frustrating, although occasionally I'll have a game where I just mess that up and go bad. But I noticed I was teaching this to some people recently. They had the same challenge, not that they didn't enjoy it, but the same challenge with that economy. So I think it's a little tricky to get past, which is in a way really fun. The discovery on how to use that economy is pretty cool to me.
Yeah, Adam, that thing you said about it's just text, but it doesn't need art. The text is good enough. Yeah, so that's not true. That's not really true at all. It's the text is not enough. This is what makes me sad about this is that for the first few times that I played this game, I thought it was pretty cool. It was a pretty clever idea, and the text did feel like enough for a little while. But man, it feels to me at this point like the same things over and over and over again. I see the same cards popping up over and over and over and over again. This is one of the few games where I've said, yeah, you don't need to invite me anymore on BGA. So this is another one that I wish I liked more. I wish I could get behind it. I wish that it wasn't just a big, crazy spreadsheet. But what can you do?
Come on, just because I said a few little bad things about Yokohama, you come back and be on the side about this. Come on, man.
Revenge.
It's funny
you mentioned the spreadsheets, and this probably more than any other game I've ever seen, the player boards themselves do really look like spreadsheets. They're little lines, just gray and white lines going all the way down. But I've gotten past that now. I never even think about it anymore. It is very usable, even if it's not very pretty.
Usable. Yes.
That's what I look for in my productions.
Yes. Very practical.
All right, well, I'm back to another Simone Luciani game. This one co-designed with Danielle Tascini, and this is Tzolk'in, the Mayan calendar. This is a very, it's got a very gimmicky central mechanism that actually works really well. And it's the idea that you're placing workers on these gears, and every end of everybody's turn, the gears shift. And so your workers will go to stronger and stronger places. And you have to time it that you're going to be pulling workers off at the right time, putting workers on at the right time. There's a feed your people mechanism, which can be a little punishing in this one, to be honest. This one is hard to keep up with. But there's a lot of fun things to do, and the game shifts every time you play it because of what spaces other people are taking. So you kind of get yourself blocked out of certain gears. Maybe at times you wanted them, you kind of have to shift and go to different directions. What I think really elevated this and is keeping it on my list is that the Tribes and Prophecies expansion drastically changes the way I play the game every time, both with the unique player powers you have, which you can really lean into, and with those the prophecies track on the side, which makes you basically motivates you to kind of get certain things done early in the game before you get to the round where it gets more expensive to do it and you'll get penalized or get bonuses if you do it well. And so that I love playing it, especially with the expansion, but even without, I always have a fun time with Tzolk'in the Mayan calendar.
Such a great choice, Tim. Totally agree. I love this game. I won't say that Tribes and Prophecies is a must-have for this. I think it's great both ways.
Yeah.
But it does have a great expansion. I like the dynamic that it adds to the game.
This is another one I'm just exceptionally bad at. I don't understand how to use those gears and how to sail my guys around in a circle to get some corn and not starve my people out. I'm just not good at feeding my people. Don't put me in charge of feeding a tribe or a continent or a state or any amount of people, because I'll just let them starve, apparently, whether I mean to or not. I see that it's a good game. I am just bad at Tzolk'in the Mayan calendar.
Well, for what it's worth, Adam, your family seems to be doing okay.
I know how to cook real food. I just don't know how to do imaginary board game food. So real food.
It's not good with corn. Don't put Adam in charge of grilling the corn in
That's right.
4th of July.
Right. All right. Well, I do believe that gets us to number 27, which is a game that actually dropped quite a bit on my list. And it's a game that I still love, but it's starting to get a little bit samey to me. And maybe that means it's time for an expansion. It was in my top 10 last year, and this year it's down to number 27. It's Ark Nova, designed by Matthias Wig and published by Spiel. I can't dislike this one too much. It's a game I still love because I'm playing it all the time on BGA. I really do enjoy this game, but I'm finding that in terms of like a sit down, make it the centerpiece of a game night, a couple things. One is it really does feel like you're doing a lot of the same stuff over and over again. In BGA, that doesn't bother me quite as much because it's so streamlined. It's so streamlined playing it online where the computer is doing all the work for you. And it's fun to be able to do these little micro adjustments to try to see if this strategy works versus that strategy in a way that I don't think I'd have the patience for if I was playing this game constantly in real life for, multiple hour games at a time. The other thing, and we've talked about this quite a bit, is the fact that when you're playing it in real life, there is so much upkeep, so many things to keep track of that it gets really, really challenging. The number of times that you inadvertently either cheat yourself or cheat the other players because you miss some little thing that you were supposed to do. Now, in BGA, that's not a big deal. But when you're playing it in real life, it can be quite frustrating. So I think because the bones of this game are so good, probably what I need to do is get the Marine World expansion, or at least try it, because it feels like that's going to sort of reopen this one back up for me. Tim, what do you think? Is that one going to bring it back up the list for me?
I think it will. It does a couple things really well. It does completely change. You're going to see a bunch more cards that you just aren't seeing, and that includes the scoring cards. It includes the cards that are come out of the deck. There's a ton of them. Some new mechanism, like new iconography, new mechanisms that are going to trigger. So it definitely, my few plays of Marine Worlds have felt drastically different than the plays that I'm getting on Board Game Arena, which do not, I wouldn't say they get repetitive. There's a lot to find in this deck, but it is a little different. The more drastic thing, though, is that everybody drafts 2 cards that are going to be unique for you. 2 of your 5 action cards will be different than everybody else's action cards now. They'll get either little bonuses or little special abilities, sometimes different when you flip over the card. And that makes you really, when you, like, I rarely upgrade my sponsors card, for example. I play sponsors a lot, but I rarely choose that as my upgrade. But if you get that better sponsors card, you might find yourself leaning into that, right? And so it kind of depends on what, and you draft these at the beginning on what you end up in. I've had very different ones every time I played. So I think you would find, at least from a variability and kind of a sameness perspective, it would drastically fix that for you. What it won't fix is how many little rules you have to follow. Yeah. In fact, there's probably a few more when you add the expansion in. So I got a recent play of a 2-player game of this with another experienced player with the expansion, and it was fantastic. It was so much fun. But it's hard to get to the table with new players. It's got a lot of rules. It's got a lot going on. So I don't get this played as much as I'd like to. And I can see why it's sinking a little bit after a lot of plays. But yeah, it's still a great game. I'm glad to see it on the list.
So I played this one recently with you guys on Board Game. We actually won somehow. I don't know what happened. I think somehow I stumbled on a way to push the end and make it more of a race. I thought that was kind of neat. I was able to accelerate the game end a little bit. So again, I don't know, it was by any skill of my own that this happened. It just kind of worked out that way. What else I was going to say? Oh, I think there is a lot that they could do with that 5-card action selection. I think that is really spectacular. I would love to see that developed a little more. I think you could take just that section of the game and make some cool dynamics out of that, the way you can manipulate that, or like you were saying, add some different cards or upgrade some of those cards a little bit better, or have some more diversity, some more variation within that. So parts of this game are really, really neat. You said it too. There's a lot of little weird rules in this one, Tim, like these little scholar hats and I don't know, just some little things I'm still not sure what they are on Board Gamer. Like, what is this thing? I didn't even know this was part of the game. So I'll be looking at it and have to dig around and figure out what exactly it does. So, this is a weird one for me, Ark Nova. A lot of people love it because it's so freaking high on Board Game Geek.
Yeah, speaking of like edge rules, there was a rule that I played this game on Board Game Arena probably 50 times. I played it in person many times. And then one day I was like, there's got to be a bug here. I keep seeing this thing happen. And I reported a bug on Board Game Arena, and someone responded and said, that's not a bug. That's how the rules work. So it was the fact that when you use a card, like an upgraded animals card, to play an animal from the row, you have to pay for the cost of where that animal's coming from. So there's an additional 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. You have to pay extra coins for that. I never knew that. So there's enough rules in this thing that it is a little bit, it's a lot to keep up with all those things until you get in the habit of it. But the one other cool thing about this game, though, I think, is that it's so thematic because of the fact that you literally have to build enclosures for your animals. You have to put animals in the enclosures. They have different restrictions. So there's quite a bit that really makes you feel like you're building a zoo, and you end up with this cool, asymmetric zoo layout at the end of the game. It's a lot of great things about it, but also some slightly clunky things. And I would agree with you on that.
Yeah. By the way, Tim, I never upgrade my sponsor's card either.
You will once you get that expansion.
Yeah.
I don't even know what you guys are talking about. But my number 27 game is Age of Galaxy. Why is it so high? I don't know. I think I saw it on my little ranking engine, and I was like, you know what? I love that little game. It's fantastic. It packs a big punch in a tiny box. Maybe you can see it back there on my shelf. You probably can't see it because it's puny. The box is microscopic. But it has all of this galaxy in there, an entire age of galaxy, whatever that means, is in this box. It's a light little 4X game, not super light. It has tech trees and it has exploration. The one maybe fault with this game is that the exploration strategy is pretty tough to counter. So I'd like to see maybe more development against that exploration strategy. Still have tons of fun. I think one of my favorite parts about this game is all the different cards and seeing how those different cards can work together. There's a unique deck of I want to say roughly 50 cards, maybe more than that, of all these different alien species. The artwork's phenomenal on these. They all do something different. So the way you're going to be able to combine those together on subsequent plays over time is going to generate some neat things, I think. My number 27 game, Age of Galaxy.
The standout mechanism is those alien cards. It's so fun to, you get a hand of 7 and you're going to end up playing 3 of them as your unique civilizations, and they just are going to kind of change your strategy. So I think that's really fun. This fell for me a little bit after playing it 2-player. I found it to go too quick, which is a weird complaint, but it just felt like the game was over in 30 minutes. Huh. And my previous plays had always been 4 players. Yeah, I think always 4. And to me, that made it feel a little more epic. There was more stuff that happened before it came back around to my turn, even though it wasn't a long time. So it's a small box. You'd expect it to play quickly. But in my opinion, it just felt like there wasn't enough game there with 2 people. But that said, it's still a fun game. I wasn't getting it played. I think it's hard to get played because it's such a small production, even though you could put this as like a game night, event game, because this will take an hour to an hour and a half at least with 4 players. Nobody wants to play something in a little tiny box with cardboard wafer thin board. So I wasn't getting it played. I put it on my shelf, but it keeps drawing back. I want to get it to the table. So I'm going to try to get this in with my regular 3 to 4 player group and see what they think of it. See if I can at least get one more fun play in it like that. But right. It's a fun game for the size of the box. There's a lot of game in there. I think it's
$35 or something to buy this one.
Yeah.
That thing about the the game being a little bit too small in presentation to make it a centerpiece of a game night. I was thinking something like that, but you said it better than I did. So thank you, Tim, for saving me the trouble of having to say that. The other thing, this game needs a new title expansion. So if they can work on that, then I think we'll be good.
Yeah, Age of Innovation worked much better using the Age of title somehow.
Yeah. Right.
All right. Well, my number, 27. My number 27. This also fell for me. I think it was on my top 10 2 or 3 years ago. This is Underwater Cities by Vladimir Suchy. Another one of my favorite designers. Again, if it's on my list here, it's still because it's a game I love. It's fallen a little bit for me because the game goes long and it's hard to get tabled because of that. But it's so much fun to put the little combos of the cards you're playing along with the actions that you're choosing together and make those things work. It's the right type of worker placement for me, where it's tight. Sometimes you will not be able to get done what you want because somebody else went before you in a round, and there's a way to take over that round first player marker if you really want to do that in the next round. So there's a lot about this game that I really like, but the length of the game and the heavy upkeep that happens on those 3 upkeep rounds where you got to score up all this stuff and gather these resources, that always feels a little clunky, it slows the game down a little bit. So that's probably why it's sunk for me. I got a recent great play of this in with some friends and still loved it. Also, there's another Vladimir Suchy this used to be my favorite. There's a new one that's going to be a little bit higher on my list. So Underwater City is still a fun game though.
I feel like the last time I played this one was December 2020, which how's that for surprisingly specific in terms of my recollection?
It's because you were traveling, right?
It's because I was traveling, right?
Yeah.
I can remember where I was sitting when I was playing this game with you guys. And I don't remember it being like my favorite game or anything, but I do want to play this one again. We've talked about it enough that I do want to try this one again and see how it hits for me after, a couple of years and a pretty considerable change in my preferences for games.
Well, Tim, I don't quite have my finger on the pulse of that other Vladimir Suchy game you might be talking about, but Underwater City is great. You introduced this one to me. I've always been bad at it. You're always beat me down with the submarine doors or whatever they are. Another tough one for me, tough to get it right. You have to get things in the right sequence in order to spread your city across your player board and get all those points. But yeah, you brought it up. Those upkeep phases. There's a lot going on. I got to collect my seaweed and my gold press latinum. What is that stuff called? Steel plasts.
Plastisteel, I think it's called.
Yeah, some weird name for that. Anyway, yeah, that was kind of. And then you got to feed your people some more, which I was able to do in this one. So decently well.
Yeah, this one's not a hard one to feed your people generally. Yeah. It's just one more thing you got to watch for a little bit.
I think I managed to kill a few of my citizens like the first or second time we played. So
I did
figure out how to do it.
It didn't hurt. The game doesn't have it's a colorful production, but it's not the most it's not the nicest production. Like Adam was mentioning, those submarine doors, which are these just cardboard rectangles that you use as workers to block your spaces. The most boring worker placement component ever. But I did upgrade everything in this game because it was one of the early games I had in COVID and couldn't play games, so I was just buying stuff to upgrade it. So I got these little 3D printed plastic submarines in the player colors that use as your workers now, and it's so much more fun to play with those.
Well, I think this gets us down to number 26, and this game is probably a great example of why my method of picking my games, it does have a flaw occasionally, and this flaw, I think, is that this was on my list last year, and it's gone up by about 10 spaces, even though I haven't actually played the game. I've only played one game of this, and it was years ago. So why did it move up so much? I'm not entirely sure, other than maybe it's looming larger in my memory, or maybe there's something about it that just seems more attractive now. I don't know. But it's Terracotta Army, designed by Przemysław Fornal and Adam Kopinski, who folks may recognize from many of his games from Awaken Realms. This one is published by Board and Dice. Clever game where you are trying to build terracotta soldiers to be buried with the Emperor. And the mechanism for choosing your actions in this game is one of the coolest of all time. I think we've talked about it multiple times on different shows where we've discussed action selection mechanisms, where you have these 3 concentric circles where each level of the circle is a different action, and you're spinning these circles around, trying to get it so you can line up just the right suite of actions so you can get done what you got to get done, build, whether it's, getting resources or building new statues or what have you. It's also got, for a pretty small production, a pretty delightful production. There's nice little figures. The terracotta soldiers are pretty neat. Fun game. Had a really good time playing it. It's been a long time since I played it, but I want to play it again. This is one of those ones that we need to, add it to the BGG Con list and, check it out of the library and get it played. We multiple times we've said that now, so it's time to actually do it, I think.
Yeah, this is a great one, Chris. I think I had a chance to play 2 or 3 turns of this game before there was something happening down. I don't know. One of the girls got possessed by a demon, and then we had to go figure that whole situation. It does happen. So I had to go take care of that and, read some verses and expunge any sort of whatever. I would like to go back and play this one again. Like you said, the action mechanism, the action selection mechanism is pretty neat. That little circle thing going in. The way you score is crazy with the, going sideways and across and the different sections of the board that you're scoring out. So some really cool things going here. Like you said, the production is great too. I want to try this one again. Let's do it. Terracotta Army.
The power of Christ compels me to want to play this game again too.
Yeah.
That's an Exorcist quote in case you didn't catch it. I'm not getting all religious here. Just an exorcism.
Nice job, Tim.
All right. Number 26 for me. This is one at least one of you have talked about already. I think it was Tim for sure. This is Revive. This is by some great designers: Huggy Meister, Christian Amundsen Ostby, Elis Svensson, and Anna Wormland, and published by Aporta Games. This is has one of the best player boards in the business. You're unlocking these things as you're marching your little. This is a tech track essentially. Marching your little tech track down these 3 different tracks that you're going along, unlocking these different actions as you go. Tim brought it up. The lightning bolt actions really, really extend the length of your individual turn in this game, and therefore extend the downtime of everybody else playing this game while they're watching you take bonus action after bonus action after bonus action. Come on, was it my turn already? I don't have to go. But that aside, a great game, great board. You're turning snow into land, and you're flying your crows and your hawks around, getting some bonus stuff, getting some cheaper things, getting the big points in the corners, and moving some beautiful components from this place to that, unlocking some things. Revive.
Yep. Fantastic game that I talked about last week. I just talking about it makes me want to play it again.
Yeah. Great game.
All right.
My number. Well said.
My number 26 is Boast or Nothing. This is a true trick-taking game by Yeonmin Jung, and this is it's been published by a few Japanese companies, and it's not been available in the United States, but Portland Game Collective, I believe, is going to be bringing this to the United States. I don't know if it's here yet, and they're listed as one of the publishers, but I heard that they were bringing it. So I can't wait to own a copy of this. I've played a few times with friends. This is the most, probably one of the most straightforward classic trick-taking style games that you'll find of this huge mix of trick-taking weirdness that's coming out these days. But it does have a couple clever, unique gimmicks to it. One is, notwithstanding, is the funky, silly artwork and theme on it, which is just a hilarious thing to look at every time I'm playing. But the second is that everyone plays with 7 cards, so I believe we're playing 7 tricks in a round, and you are always trying to either win 3 tricks or 0 tricks. If you win 3 tricks, you get 1 point. If you win 0 tricks, you get 2 points, or something like that. I might have the exact scoring wrong, but it's you're really setting yourself up to try to throw tricks early if you're afraid you're going to win too many, because you don't want to get any more than that 3 tricks. At the start of the round, there are 3 cards discarded, and if I remember it, I think they're face up. But it's pretty clear information. You know what you've got. You know what the leading suit, or the winning suit, the trump suit, is always going to be the color that's the top of the stack of these 3 colors. There's these 3 discs, yellow, red, and blue. And whichever suit won the last hand, that color goes to the bottom of the stack. So you can predict not only what the current suit is, the current trump, but likely what the next trump's going to be, assuming that one doesn't win. So it's pretty clever. You can really set yourself up for clever turns, clever rounds. And you only play to like 5 or 6 points here. So the game goes pretty quick. You're going to play like 10 hands or something with friends, 10 rounds with friends, maybe less than that. I've had a great time playing this with different groups, with different player counts. It's my favorite. I think it's my top. Yeah, it's the top trick-taking game on my list. Really wonderful. I think, Chris, you probably wouldn't like it because you don't like trick-taking. But Adam, you'd probably love this one.
Great game. Just joking. You guys keep criticizing me because I don't say things about the games. Well, and no, I don't really think that would be a great game, but I do want to look at that ridiculous artwork. Other than that, trick-taking games just don't thrill me. But this one does look like some goofy fun to look at.
Great news about them bringing this on or Portland Game Collective bringing this to the United States. Are they going to keep the same artwork? Do you know?
I don't know anything about it other than that they are. I'd heard that they're getting published and that they are now listed as a publisher here. And they don't have new artwork. Sometimes when a game gets republished in the U.S., it'll show the new artwork. If they are going to, they haven't posted it yet. So far it looks like the same. Hopefully the rule book's better though, because the rule book was kind of atrocious, maybe a translation issue, hard to find some exceptions. So hopefully they fix that.
Okay.
Well, here we are at number 25, and this is another one. I know I said there weren't going to be many of these, but this is another one that didn't move that much on my list. It moved a couple spaces since last year, staying pretty solid and consistent. It's Lost Ruins of Arnak, designed by Min and Elwin and published by Czech Games Edition. Great worker placement, Euro-style game that is so highly thematic. Every play makes you feel like you are Indiana Jones. It's so fun. The one thing that I kind of struggle with on this game is whether or not I really, really like the Expedition Leaders expansion, because on the one hand, if you played this a bunch of times, it can start to feel a little bit samey if you're playing it frequently, back to back. And the Expedition Leaders makes it so you don't really feel that way. On the other hand, Expedition Leaders makes it feel like a much heavier game. I think it feels more complex, heavier, probably takes a bit longer too. So I'm not sure about that. I think I like it, but I also love the base game. And I guess that's really what I'm talking about here is the base game. So I'll just stick to that. I play this game pretty much on constant rotation on BGA, and it's always a pleasure to play in real life too. I like the little tablets and whatnot are always fun to handle. And again, just it always puts you in mind of a great, exciting adventure, similar to the Quest for El Dorado, which is now my new favorite Reiner Knizia game, which I mentioned, I think, last week. So I love me some adventure. Bring it on.
This is one, I love the theme of this one, but it just hasn't really super clicked for me. I don't know why. I think the theme is great. I love that exploration idea and going out and finding some, recovering some artifacts. Or what are you trying to do in this game? Are you stealing artifacts, recovering artifacts? Are you giving them back to are you going and looting some monsters like pet toy that he has? What is happening here, Chris?
There is some moral ambiguity in this game. So we do have to acknowledge that. So the monsters are guarding the artifacts, but I don't think the monsters own the artifacts. I think you probably are stealing them from some native people who would probably like to have them back.
Or lost civilization where none of the native people are, none of the bloodlines are alive anymore.
But we all know that that's not real.
That's a nice way to write it off and make it okay. But anyway, despite the moral ambiguity, I think the theme's fantastic. You got the water side, the land side. You're trying to do this. So I feel like I should be into this one. For some reason, the mechanisms don't quite click for me, or there's a weird card market up top with a stick going across. I don't really understand what's going on there. I always get my butt kicked by the monsters, so maybe that's why I don't like it.
Stick going across.
The stick, you know what I'm talking about?
The stick's a little confusing. You mean the round marker?
It's a stick. It's a little like, find some water in the dirt, little stick. Anyway, it doesn't quite work for me. I'll keep trying it because it's neat, but I'll just feel mediocre about it every time I play it.
My first couple plays of the Expedition Leaders expansion, Chris, I did feel a lot like you did, where it felt like it added a lot of weight. But after playing the base game a lot more, my wife and I were playing it a lot. It's almost, I'm really glad I have it now. I like the new tracks that come with the expansion. I like the variety of new cards that you can just add right in, even if you don't play with any of the other modules. And then I am enjoying just exploring the different characters now. I don't know how balanced they are, but it's fun. Every one of them plays a little different. There is a second expansion now. can't remember what it's called, but basically it is a co-op or solo campaign expansion. But you don't have to play it like that. You can take all the components and everything that come in that box and just blend them in, and it ends up with just more cards, new tracks, a couple new characters, expedition leader characters. And so I have played a little bit of that campaign with my wife, and it's really fun, and it's interesting how it changes each game in the campaign. I think there's 5 games, but each one changes the mechanisms enough to make you feel like you're playing a different game. Oh, yeah. Problem is, we don't really like playing cooperative that much, so we've played a few times, but it's not getting me excited to go back to it. I'd rather just play it competitively. But the expansion does add a lot of fun stuff just to mix into the competitive game, so I think it's worth it there too. Fun game.
Up next for me is Godspeed. This is the one Chris already talked about, and I alluded to that it was going to be up ahead on my list tonight. Here it is, number 25, Godspeed. I had a lot of fun going back to this one when we played it in Big Bear. Just want to reiterate, just bidding, the little bid, the auction piece of this game really puts it over the top for me. But yeah, now that Tim said it can go a little long and repetitive and can get a little frustrating at times when you mess it up 3 times in a row. I think that I was trying to get the one spot and didn't realize you could do this other thing to get the thing that you needed, and I messed that up like 3 times. Anyway, this game's great. Underrated. Godspeed.
Great game. Great game.
Great game.
All right, my number 25 is the most recent game I've actually played, and that's Architects of the West Kingdom. This game has been getting a ton of plays with me. When I introduced it to you guys, I had only played it once before, I think, and I was shocked that you guys enjoyed it, or at least if I remember you did. I know Adam did, because this is a very straightforward worker placement game with a couple of unique mechanisms, but the most interesting thing is that there is so much player interaction here. You have to keep the other players in check, and you do that by literally capturing their workers and then sending them to jail for money. And so it's something you have to be thinking about. You have to waste a turn to do it sometimes, but it can be a great way to get a lot of money at one time. But you have to slow those players down, or they're going to keep building up those spaces. So every game feels like you're really playing the players and not just the game itself. You have to be watching what they're trying to do, and I love that about it. So it's keeping it fresh. I've now played this probably 30 times in the last several months, because Danielle and I are playing it a lot. 2 players. We're introducing it to friends all the time, especially like people that are just kind of getting into the hobby, like just getting exposed to some games, because the mechanisms aren't tough. And Sunday was Father's Day, and so we did lots of fun stuff. My wife and daughter really took care of me, but one of the things I wanted to do was get a couple of games in, and my daughter was willing to try a new game, so we taught it to her. She picked it right up because as soon as I'm teaching, she's like, oh, this is just like Everdell. So she knows Everdell well, so she kind of had a good grasp on the worker placement mechanism and some of the tableau building, but she just ran with that, and it was great. She had a great time with it. She ended up beating me. She took second out of the 3 of us. I took a last place on that one, but it was fun and fun to get into it. Even though it's not a super complicated game, it's a really fun game for this, worker placement.
Great game, Chris.
Great game.
Great game. I think it's a fantastic pick, Tim. Despite Chris's silence, this one is tons of fun. The interaction is there for me. I would love to go back and play this game anytime.
Yeah, no, I wasn't really being silent.
Okay.
No, that is a really good pick. Agreed. Honestly, I forgot what game you were just talking about.
That happens to be a lot. Architects of the West Kingdom, yeah.
That's why I was being so quiet. I forgot what you were talking. I got distracted looking up my next one. Yeah, no, Architects is a great game. Which surprises me, because a lot of the other games in the series I'm not a super fan of. So I was very pleasantly surprised by Architects. I played several games of this on BGA since we first did our review, and I've enjoyed every single one. And I love being able to arrest other people's characters and whatnot. That's so much fun.
Yeah, it's like an essential part of the economy here is arresting people's characters so you can get money. So that's pretty neat.
Just like in real life. So number 24 is probably the biggest surprise on my list. And the reason for that is because it was my number 1 game last year.
Whoa.
And has dropped precipitously. And that is Wonderland's War, designed by Tim Eisner, Ben Eisner, and Ian Moss, and published by Druid City Games. Now, I said it last week, and I'll say it again just because I think it's worth pointing out in a situation like this. Don't read too much into that because, anything in the top 25 means a great game. So this does not mean that it is not a great game. I just want to reiterate that. But I did notice a couple of limitations from my last couple plays of this game. One of them was I played a 2-player game. Actually, I played two-player games of it, and it lost so much of its energy playing it with 2 players. It's a game you have to get a higher player count for. So there's a limitation right there. The other one was you got to be playing this game with the right people. And again, it has a lot to do with the energy. Like when I was playing the last time I played this game, it was with a group that wasn't super energetic about it, that it was kind of, it was a very kind of keep your head down and do your thing, which is not the way you got to play this game. You got to play this game where you're standing up around the table, hooting and hollering and making a fuss. And some groups are a little bit more staid, a little bit more quiet about how you play the game. And this happened to be the group that I was playing it with. And so it just didn't have the same feel that it had when we're playing it at a con and everybody's had a couple drinks and we're goofing around and laughing and cheering each other on. And so you put those two together, and in my memory right now, it just doesn't have quite the standing that it had last year when all of my plays were these big epic experiences. Now, again, this is a great game. It is a terrific game. I would happily play it anytime. But hopefully I'll be playing it with a group like you guys that's getting into it as much as I am.
I agree, Chris. This almost has a feel of like being at the craps table or being at the blackjack poker table. Some big moments, some woohoo, some stand up when you're drawn out of the bag. You know exactly what chip you need. Are you going to get it? Is it going to pop out? We've had so many of these stand up moments where we can't contain our energy. We have to stand up and sort of jitter it all out as we're pulling the chips out of the bag. A lot of fun playing Wonderland's War. That's a good pick.
Yeah, and good job, Chris's game group, for ruining Wonderland's War from him. It's funny. I actually had a 3-player game of this recently with 2 of my friends who were. I was excited to introduce them to it, and they're definitely generally more Euro style players, and so they were. It was kind of the same way, right? Like I was having fun. There's cool decisions here. It's fun times. But to them, you could see them kind of analyzing. It was like more of them picking it apart and saying, what's the most optimal thing here versus like, I'm just going to keep pulling to see if I can, like break through and get to that hammer space or, So I definitely the group that you're playing with, this is not a Euro style. This is not like you said, not a heads down game. This is an interactive game that you want to be having fun with, enjoying the silly theme and the exciting moments and the fun things that you're drafting at the table and the goofy characters that are zooming around the board and stuff.
And just in case there's anybody from my Thursday night game group listening to this, it was not them. I actually haven't played this game with them, so it was not them. If anybody's listening, it's not you.
So a couple of things to echo that sentiment, Chris. I tried this one for my birthday last year, almost a year ago now, and so the neighbors, some good friends, neighbors came over. One of them was just almost, as sick as a dog. He probably shouldn't have come over. And then his wife also came over, and there's a lot going on in this game. There's a lot to grasp if, once you start doing it and you see the flow of it, oh yeah, it's like you draw some chips, do this thing, forge this guy, increase your player board. That makes so much sense. But if you're trying to explain this to a new person, you pull out this little flow chart thing, like what? So it could be a little difficult. And then I'll put in a plug for the 2-player game. Sarah and I played this at 2, and we did, I don't know if it's a variant or what you're supposed to do with all the forging going on, extra forge chips. So that worked out. We enjoyed it, but again, probably, group dependent or partner dependent on who you're playing that one with. We had a fun time at 2, but yeah, it loses a lot of the dynamics when we're playing at 4 players. You got the bets that you have, the side bets going on, who's going to win. Just that little bonus you might get from that is pretty neat. So yeah, interesting analysis of Wonderland's War here, Chris. My number 24 game is Dune, original Dune, old school Dune. And talk about a game you need more players with. You really need 6 for this one. It's designed by Bill Everly, Jack Kittredge, and Peter Olotka. Originally published in 1979, became a Grail game. People were going all over the place, printing and playing, making their own boards out of wood and hiring woodworkers to design like a amazing looking board. You can go on Board Game Geek and see some amazing pictures of boards that players have made for this thing. But yeah, original Dune, you've got 6 factions. There's a bunch of expansions to add, different factions from the Dune universe, the one that's in theaters now, that very same one. And you've got the map of Dune. You've got the Bene Gesserit that try to predict who's going to win and what round they're going to win. If they predict it right, they become the winners. The Empire's collected all this spice because everybody that buys a card in that first round, the first phase of each round, has to pay the Empire. You've got the Guild that's got all kinds of money because they travel around the planet. You have to pay the Spacing Guild. You got Atreides who's broke, but they know they have all the knowledge. So these asymmetric factions going through this phase play, maybe 8 phases in each round. Most of them breeze right by. This game could be weird. There's the auction phase. It can take a while from each round. And then you get to the combat phase where we hopefully don't mess that up, because if you do, you can be out of the game for, 4 or 5 rounds. It might be over before you're back in the game. But you have these moments in this game unlike any other. If you have somebody's trader card in your hand, you play that out there, you win the whole battle, all their guys die. You take control of this. You have the storm that's sweeping across. Some incredibly thematic, interesting things going on in Dune, but also some quirky, weird things with the rule book. How are you going to play it? I think this is a fantastic game. It needs that at least one player who's very familiar with the rules and can guide everybody through and keep things on track and keep it moving. Otherwise, you're going to have a bunch of people just kind of swimming around in circles and not much getting done very quickly. So that's why Dune is my number 24 game. A big desire to play this one at 6. Rarely does it happen. That's also part of why it's so high. I just have a thirst to get this one done at 6 with a group of people who at least somewhat are familiar with it, or at least have that one person that can guide us through and make it fun.
Well, I'm looking forward to playing this. And there was a time when you would have told me about this game and I was like, I would have been, nope, have no interest in playing this. But I did get to play Baby Dune, which is Dune, a game of conquest and diplomacy, which is kind of a lighter version with a lot of the same rules. And I had a lot more fun playing that than I expected. Now, I don't know how drastically the bigger asymmetry and kind of negotiation that's going to come into Dune is going to throw that off for me, or maybe I'll enjoy it more. I don't know, but I am looking forward to trying it. We've got a 6-player game set up of this at BGG-Con. This is one of the games that we are definitely going to be playing together, and we'll see. It'll be really interesting to talk about again. Adam, are you going to be that player who knows the rules and can guide us all through it really well?
I hope so. I'm going to run through this
studying on
times. Yeah, I'll try.
Yeah. Better start the work, man.
Yeah. I got to start training.
We're counting on you.
I will try to learn this one in advance since we know we're going to be playing it, but it would be nice to have somebody that, can actually keep us moving so we're not wasting a lot of time checking the rule book and stuff like that.
There is an online implementation, treachery.io or something like that, game. I don't know. It's somewhere out there. We can play this one if we get, 6.
I don't want to do that, though. I want to experience the game the way it's supposed to be experienced on the table, but I want somebody else to play it on treachery.io, get to know it well so that you can teach us. How's that?
I want to experience this game the way they did back in 1979, complete with like the disco themed cards and the people in jumpsuits and all of that good stuff. Now, I'm excited to play this one too. I enjoyed Conquest and Diplomacy, and I think the combat in this game is phenomenal. It's so much fun. Yeah. Looking forward to playing this one and actually getting the full 1979 Disco Dune experience.
Right on. Well, my number 24 is the highest Alexander Pfister game on my list, I think, and that is Isle of Skye from Chieftain to King. This is a mid-weight tile drafting game where you're basically, it's almost an auction game. What happens is at the start of the round, you pull 3 tiles, I think Carcassonne type tiles that are going to make landscapes, and you're going to be trying to connect them. But you're going to put 3 of them behind your player board, and all together, you're going to raise your player board, and you're going to show one of them that's going to be removed from the game. So these 3 are sitting in front of your player board. One of them you're going to remove from the game. And then I think the way it works is you put money behind the other 2 for how much you're going to basically set the cost on them. And if nobody else bids on them in that round, you have to pay that cost. You're giving up those coins that you put behind there. But if somebody else is willing to pay the cost on them, then you get to keep their coins. So you're kind of creating a market for the tiles in front of you. But you might have a tile that works great for you and it works great for one of the end round goals. So somebody else is willing to pay 10 coins for it, but hey, at least you got 10 coins out of it. So it's got a very interesting market that you place on these tiles and everybody places them. It's got Gaia project style round scoring where there's random tiles that are going to come up and you're going to score them at the end of each round. except each of these tiles will be scored multiple times over the course of the round. So only one of them will be scored in the first round, 2 will be scored in the second round, 3 might be scored in the third round, but it might be a combination of one of the first ones and a couple others. So you always have kind of a different timing of when it's important to start to meet some of these goals. But if you go all in on one of them, you might trigger them a couple times. So really fun there. And otherwise, it's a fairly simple game where as you gather these tiles you've purchased, you put them together, you're trying to make like little sections that surround, but really you're trying to meet these scoring goals, which might be to, have a completed column in your, you get 4 points for every completed column in your city, or for having the most sheep on tiles or little icons like sheep and little castles and things like that on it. So it's a very simple game, but I really have fun with this little market that's going on, the scoring goals that you're working towards. Straightforward. It's like a 45-minute to an hour game. So it really makes that full game night thing, but it's a game that I pull out all the time. If people are like, hey, I got an hour left, what can we get played? And this is great at 3 to 5 players. Really fun game for me. So Isle of Skye from Chieftain to King, my favorite Alexander Pfister game today.
Adam.
No questions, Chris. You don't even want to say you can't even.
Oh no, I want to let Adam go first. I want Adam to.
I have looking at it, I'm gonna say the things I always say. Looking at it, it looks putrid. The theme looks horrible, but I don't know. I tried this one. I've never tried this one. I've never come close to trying this one. When did you try this one, Tim?
So I have a friend who was living in Colorado. He actually is back here in Pasadena, so I got a chance to play some games with him this week. But him and his family had randomly picked it off a shelf somewhere, and I'd always wanted to try it. I heard good things about it, so we played it, and I fell in love with it, and I purchased a copy almost immediately. Doesn't get played a lot because it's not great at 2 players. I don't even know if it plays 2, so me and my wife don't play it, but she likes it too. So whenever we can get 3 or 4 players together that are looking to do something about an hour, we'll often pick this one. So I get to play it a couple times a year, and I always have fun with it.
And this is one of the board. Sorry, Chris. This is one of the board games that adds to the tally of more sheep on the box cover than women on the box covers in board games.
And unfortunately also adds to the tally of Clemens Franz artwork in board games.
Yeah.
So
yes, it does. It does.
I don't know. I've got a lot of Clemens Franz on my list, unfortunately. So a lot of people hire him to make great games.
Yeah.
That are, which it's a working artist. Good for him.
And an outstanding use of the colon in a board game name, because if it was just called Isle of Skye, or if it was just called From Chieftain to King, I wouldn't know what I was playing. But you put those two together, and now I get it. No, nothing about this game makes me particularly want to play it, but that doesn't mean I wouldn't play it and like it. So maybe we'll try it sometime. It sounds like it's a pretty small investment in hours of your life, so why not?
The fact that it's 24th on my list should make you darn well want to play it, because I've got great taste in board games.
That is definitely a debatable. We should have an episode on that. Episode 300, Tim's taste in board games.
Yeah, I like it.
All right, so that gets us to number 23, and this is another game that took a bit of a plummet in my list. This one was in my top 10 last year, and now it is number 23. A classic in my collection. It's one of the games that I've owned the longest. It's Terraforming Mars, designed by Jacob Frixelius and published by Frix Games and Stronghold Games. There are a million reasons why this game is wonderful, and a couple why it has fallen on my list. One of them is I just played it so much that, it lost a little bit of its luster. Another is that there are other games that I've played that do some of the same things that this game does, like Ark Nova, for example, that just sort of dilutes out my taste for some of the mechanisms in this game, like the matching up of the icons to get actions done, that sort of thing. So a great game. I still love playing it. This game, I find, is one of the ones where I really don't like playing it on BGA nearly as much as I enjoy playing it in the hard copy edition. Probably in part because I own the really upgraded special Kickstarter version that has the really nice landscape tiles and the really nice player boards. I love playing it live. It's one that I don't play as much on BGA, even though it's now available. It came up like a year or so ago. But regardless of the fact that it's dropped a fair amount on my list, it's still one that I'll happily play anytime, and I would still list it as one of my top games of all time.
Chris is a great pick. This is going to be, I'll just say number 21 on my list. So I'll talk about it now. This is one at one point in my life, I had the kid was at school, and me and my partner at the time, we just play this one every morning, sometimes twice, sometimes 3 times.
Wow.
And we just go pick up the kid after. So I became so familiar. I get so well acquainted with all the cards and the things they can do. I had little nicknames for every single card in the deck. Big ass Ice Droid was one of them. So we had that card that come down, and so just stuff like that. You get so familiar with the game. It's just comfortable, and I still love this one. It's good to see that it's higher than Ark Nova on your list. I'm happy about that. But your number 23, my number 21, Terraforming Mars.
Did you know, Chris, that Prelude was added on Board Game Arena as well, which did significantly elevate the game for me, because I was getting invited to regular games on this, and I was kind of like, I'm kind of, it's okay, but it's feeling a little redundant. And then with the addition of Prelude, it really does elevate it in a way that I didn't expect. So, anyway, that's a fun way to play it.
Okay. Yeah. I didn't know that was on there, but that definitely is a benefit as far as I'm concerned. I think when I'm playing the hard copy, Prelude is a must have. So I'll try that out and see how I feel about it on BGA.
Yeah, and I got to say, too, that this was still one of my most memorable and favorite plays from our Portland Con convention, a year ago, because we all know it so well.
Yeah.
But sometimes it's just fun to be able to sit down with 3 other people and just like get into a game. And there's no question. Nobody has to look at the rule book once. Nobody has to ask a rules question. It's just like, let's get in and start playing and have a really competitive fun. And this game has a little bit of interaction in a fun way, too, that I really like. So, yeah, Terraforming Mars is still a fun one for me.
My number 23 game is one of the first games I purchased. This is Patchwork by Uwe
Rosenberg.
Uwe.
That's
Rosenberg.
the way I understand it now. I don't know.
According to Germans, Rosenberg. According to Germans, according to Tim. Let me put that caveat in there.
So, according to what Tim says about what Germans tell him.
Exactly. That's exactly the point I'm trying to get across. So who knows how accurate it is. Anyway, Patchwork, it's a 2-player game. I don't know. Stop me if you've heard of this game, but there's probably somebody who's like, I haven't heard of it. I want to hear you talk about it anyway. So here we go. You are making a quilt. There's only 2 players. You have this grid of, I don't know if it's 10 by 10, 9 by 9, I think it is. And you have all these Tetris-like shapes, polyominoes is what they call them. So anywhere from a 1 by 2 piece to these funky shape. You have some that are like a cross, and there's a big cross. And then there's one that looks like a little oil can with a little spigot. So it's just these funky shaped patches, basically. And you're grabbing those via this little pawn. You can grab any of the 3 pieces in front of the pawn. But do you have enough buttons to pay for it? You don't have any coins or money here. You have buttons you got to use to pay for these little patches. And then that's going to move you, each patch comes with a button cost and a time cost, or how many action points. It's going to send you around this little countdown mechanism. And if you're behind the person in front of you, you get to keep going and going and going. If you pass a button on this little countdown timer, that's when you collect all of these buttons that are on the patches that you've bought already to assemble your quilt. So you can see in this simple rule set, there's this amazing economy, this amazing spatial sort of reasoning thing, where they're putting these crazy shaped patches together to try to get the highest score and make the most beautiful quilt. A really simple, light rule set game, easy to get into, easy to learn. You can be playing this one in 5 minutes. Great at 2 players. You can only play at 2 players. That's Patchwork. It turns out I'm exceptionally bad at this one. There's an app. It's a beautiful app. And I'm happy if I can beat the medium level on that one. Sometimes the easy one takes me down too. I think the easy one just guesses and just takes things randomly. That one still beats me sometimes. But medium one is difficult to beat. And then there's like a master, like Uwe Rosenberg is one of the characters you could play against on there. No chance against that level of artificial intelligence, or that algorithm, whatever I want to call it. Anyway, Patchwork, a game I recently got to play again with Sarah a few days ago. It's fantastic. So that's why it's so high on my list, number 23.
Yeah, this is a really brilliant little design, really exceptional. I wish that, I don't know why it was stuck as a two-player game, because it feels like it would have escalated easily to a larger player count, but that's the only thing missing and why I probably don't get it played more. I would probably pick it up if it did play 3 or 4, because I think it'd be a great kind of, filler type of game to start off a game night with. And, I think I probably will pick this up at some point. I've got plenty of other great 2-player games, but it's nice to add some things to the mix. This one's always fun to go back to.
Yeah, the only Patchwork version that I've played is Patchwork Doodle, which I think is quite fun. Honestly, Adam, the only thing that surprises me is that it's as high on your list as it is. I did not think this was one of your top games. So interesting choice.
Yeah, I don't talk about it much, and I hadn't played it much until last week and busted out and got to see how great it is once again. So that's why it's coming back up.
All right. Well, my number 23 is Apiary, designed by a friend of the show, Connie Vogelman. Hey, Connie. Loved having you on the show. So that was a blast, but that's not why I love this game so much. First of all, look at the box cover on this. One of the coolest box covers that you'll ever see for a game. Kwanshai Moriai's art of these sci-fi space traveling bees. It's a funky, interesting theme, and fun that they kind of tied that theme, even though it's got a sci-fi bent, into a lot of the mechanisms of the way that bees would behave and things like that. Wonderful production, colorful, but what really escalates this for me is the fun little puzzle you get to put together every time. You start with your little civilization bee that has a unique player ability. You start with your unique ship, which has a unique layout, and then you start just seeing these tiles, and you're picking up tiles out of this market and trying to find the little combos that go together, and find these little seed cards that give you special bonuses or end game scoring that you try to put together with it. And you're just trying to put together this puzzle every game, and it's been a fun and unique puzzle for me every time I play it. They announced an expansion for this, which Jamie Stegmaier said is mostly a more stuff expansion, which is exactly what I want for this game, which is just give me more variety in the civs, give me more variety in the tiles, and I think that's what we're going to get from it. So I'm really excited about that as well. But I've had a really fun time every time I played this, and I in all honesty, it's all about games that make me make tactical choices. Like it's not the only types of games I like, but when they do that, when you give me cards that I have to draw in the middle of the game or unique tiles that I have to pull from the middle of the game, and I'm going to see a variety of those every game, I'm probably going to like the game a lot because of that, not in spite of it, where I think a lot of people get frustrated by having to deal with that rotating market. So for me, this is a huge hit, and I really enjoy it a lot more than I ever expected to.
Not to cast any shade on a super cool and interesting theme, but I'm really curious to know how these space bees built all these like intricate spaceships and whatnot without opposable thumbs.
Well, I'm
Well,
sure.
if you look at the box cover art, Kwanshai Moriai shows one of the space bees carrying a little claw that's letting him.
I know.
Pick things up. So
I just looked at that too, and I don't think it answers the question.
Well, I'm sure the bees over on Planet Birth doing their podcast about board games are curious about how the humans got so far in life without having stingers on their butts.
I know.
Chris?
Yes, no, that's probably true. But before, lest you think that I'm giving this game a hard time, we may be hearing about it on my list sometime in the future.
we heard it on Adam's list. Was that last week, Adam? Or a couple weeks ago?
Yeah, let me scroll down and check out numbers.
So, somewhere in the last 20, 25.
38 on my list is where this one was. Yeah.
Got it.
22 is going to be a really quick one for me because Tim already brought it up. It's Tzolk'in, the Mayan calendar. Won't go through it again other than to say, great game. Still love playing it. I love playing it with the, I'm blanking on the name of the expansion again, Tribes and Prophecies.
Tribes and Prophecies.
Yeah, it adds a tremendous new dynamic to the game. Play the base game, enjoy it, and then when you feel like you're ready to move on, get the expansion. So much fun. I love that we played this one in Big Bear. I don't like the fact that Tim beat me at it, but it's still a great game.
Yeah, I also participated in this one. There was no participation award.
Barely participated in it.
Yeah,
if I remember right.
All right, my number 22 game is Haggis. This is one, it's on Board Game Arena. That's the only way I've ever played it. Played it way back in the day in 2021 or 2022. and had a fun time with it. And then it's been revived here recently with Tim and some of the friends of the show playing it with me on there, having a great time playing this one. It's like it's a card shedding game. The Portland Game Collective again has published this one and brought a new version to it. So that one is beautiful, kind of stained glass feel. Tim talked about this one, I think. So I'll probably pick this one up when they bring Boast or Nothing. I'll probably get Haggis along with Boast or Nothing when I have the chance. That's my number 22, Haggis.
Great game. And I thought it made my list, but I'm not seeing it on there. I've been playing this a lot lately, and I actually did get the physical version from Portland Game Collective, and they had an option. So like, there's basically, when you play the game, you can bid 15, 30, or 45 of like basically what your points are worth if you're the winner in the round. And then if somebody else beats you, then they split the points with the other player. So it's a very interesting, turns into like, once the bidder is decided, it turns into a little bit of a semi-co-op game where the other two players are really kind of working together to not let the player with the bid win. But anyway, my whole point about that is that in the main box, the bidding tokens are just cards, but Portland Game Collective offered you a little poker chip package that lets you buy these beautiful little chunky clay tokens, clay poker chips for the bidding tokens. I had to pick that up, which made this game a lot more expensive than it should have, but it is a very, very fun ladder climbing game.
Yeah, I feel like if you're going to have a game called Haggis, you should actually have a picture of a haggis on there, which wouldn't be very appetizing. It might not be as picturesque as these like stained glass windowy looking things, but I mean, come on, haggis.
What is a haggis? Is this some sort of Scottish dish?
Yeah, it's like I think it's like a goat's stomach stuffed with barley or something like that. It's pretty gnarly looking.
Yeah.
Have you tasted it, Chris?
I haven't, nor would I.
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure I wouldn't do that.
All right. Well, my number 22 is my favorite party game, and that's maybe a questionable, categorization of this, but this is Libertalia Winds of Galecrest. This is the more recent production by Stonemaier Games of Paolo Mori's original Libertalia pirate-themed game. This is a fun game where everybody has a hand of cards. You're all going to put a card face down. You flip them all over. Whoever has the highest number is going to get first pick of the booty in that round, but each of the cards has some different effects on them, and so some of them may trigger some of the effects from the lowest number up before you get to taking the booty. And so what will happen sometimes is that you might have a card that like knocks out the highest number one and that person gets taken out. And it's always a fun, surprising little game. You know what other cards people have in their hand in this first round because you all have the same cards, but you carry some of them over. And so if you don't keep track of what people have carried over, you might be surprised in the second round of what showed up again, along with the other cards that have popped up in there. This version of the game doesn't fix, but improves on a couple things from the original. Not only do I prefer the theme and the colorful design, art direction here, but it adds another 10 cards. So you're just going to get a bigger variety of cards that show up every game. You're going to see more variety in the cards. It adds a variety in the ways that each of the booty that you collect, the little treasures and stuff, is going to have different positive or negative effects, which motivates you to want to get them. But there are different effects you can get. And there's a little mini expansion, which I haven't picked up yet, which adds some new booty effects, which is cool. And then there's this great tiebreaker mechanism called reputation here, where you can kind of manipulate your reputation with some of the cards you play. And that ends up being the tiebreaker. So it's very visible whether you're going to beat somebody else if you both play the same number of cards. So it gives you some good information, which fixes what was probably the biggest flaw of the original Libertalia. I really like playing this game, always have fun with it. I know you guys have not had a chance to play it in person yet and don't enjoy it, but I don't think that this game shines at all asynchronous. So I really think you should give this one a shake. In real life, real time playing with other people. And I think you'd have a fun time with it.
Yeah, really did not enjoy this one playing asynchronously, but I'm totally open to the idea of trying this one live and seeing how it goes. I think I can squint a little bit and see the fun there. Hopefully I'm right about that.
Good way to put it, Chris. I would like to try this one live too. A little chaotic for me, maybe, but
yeah.
If you come in with the right mindset that, maybe some stuff you're going to want to try will work out, but it probably won't, then just have fun with it. I think that's the way to approach, what's the one called?
Libertalia. Yeah, and that's why I kind of call it a party game, because it really is not, there's not a whole lot of play. You can make some clever moves, but it's very often you're just going to be surprised because somebody else decided they were making a clever move, and it kind of throws randomness into your decision. So it's silly and it's funny, but there's always some fun, laugh out loud moments when I'm playing this at the table with people. So it's, not quite a social party game, but it is a party game from the aspect. If I just want to hang out, do an activity with some friends and have a good time, then that's how it fits. And this is one of my favorites.
That brings us to the top of the list. Here we are, number 21. And I think this one's going to shock you a little bit when I list this one. It's Kanban EV by Vital Lacerda, published by Eagle Griffin Games. I've only played this game once, and it was very recent. But right after playing this game, I played Bot Factory with the same people that I played Kanban EV with. And Bot Factory is basically Kanban EV Lite. It's the same concepts, the same basic mechanisms. You're just building robots instead of electric vehicles, and it's a much lighter game. I mean, talk about the difference between multiple hours at 2 players versus an hour and a half for 4 players. I mean, almost hard to believe how much these 2 games felt alike. But playing Bot Factory actually made me more excited about going back and playing Kanban EV again. Like, I am dying to get this game played a second time. It's got an absolutely fascinating action selection mechanism, which I talked about a little bit on our On the Table segment where I mentioned this game, where you're trying to move down this hallway, picking different departments within the electric vehicle factory, but you can't go to the place where the boss is. And when the boss goes to a certain department, they're going to judge you based upon your performance in that department. And there's just so many interesting thematic and dynamic mechanisms that are going into play there. There's interesting dynamics that are happening in how you select where you go that aren't just what move do I want to take. That there's just, it almost blows my mind thinking of all the different iterations of how you might make a decision in this game. So I really want to get back and play it again. Tim, I have a feeling that you would probably really like this one. Adam, you might. I have a little bit harder time piecing out your taste on some of these things. But I'm pretty sure Tim would like it. I think you guys, I would like to play this one with both of you and see how you like it.
Yeah, I'd like to try this one. They're interesting, right? Vital Lacerda, he has a lot of complexity for complexity's sake, it seems like sometimes. But once you can fight through that, I've only tried the one. I only tried On Mars, so what do I know? I'd like to try Kanban EV. Did you play the version that has like the metal cars, the super fancy metal cars, Chris?
No, this is probably just the standard production version.
Okay.
Yeah, Chris, your description of it last week made me really excited about it. I was kind of mediocre on Mars, which is the only Vital Lacerda game that I've played before. Not that it didn't, it had very interesting choices and some very cool things going on with it, but I just felt like he added some weight for unnecessary weight's sake, and that just kind of frustrated me. But I'm definitely willing to try another one again. This is top of my list to want to. I'd love to play this with you again. BGG Con would be a great fit because you've got a little bit of background on it. You wouldn't have to fully learn it again. Could hopefully teach us at the table, and would be fun to sit down and play it with you in person. So I'd be up for that.
Great.
I think we have up to like 15 games.
I know.
We're gonna need a month.
All right, my number 20 is Terraforming Mars. We already talked about it. One thing I'll add is that the map is cool. That's where a lot of the player interaction is happening. You're going to get this spot first. You're going to get Noctis City. Are you going to put an atomic bomb right by Noctis City to knock out all the gardens that could possibly go there? Or are you going to snatch this city spot that's next to 4 gardens right here before Chris can get to it? So the interaction piece puts this one up high for me. Again, one of the first games I bought, getting into the hobby, played it so many times. This is my number 21 game of all time this, week. Terraforming Mars.
Yeah, well, I'll spoil that I'm going to be talking about this next week, but I won't say much more about it right now. But great game. Glad to see it on both your lists still. All right, my number 21 and the last game we're going to talk about this week is another game that we've talked about, so won't have to say too much about it. This is Wonderland's War. It has also fallen for me a bit. It was in my top 10 the last 2 years, and I think for some of the same reasons as Chris, is that I've still had fun plays with it, many fun plays with it, in fact. But sometimes it's not hitting for everybody the same way it hits for us. And that just reminds me that we are such a freaking great game group. We have such a fun time playing games together.
Yeah.
Honestly, this is why we started making this podcast, because I remember we used to just be sitting around playing these games on Tabletop Simulator once COVID hit and having such a great time laughing with each other. And Wonderland's War is exactly the type of game you want to play with a group that's willing to laugh with and at each other and trash talk each other. And so it's great playing with you guys. It's been my favorite way to play every time, but I've had a lot of other great plays too. In any case, It's not a perfect hit every time. It's a bit fiddly. It's got a lot of rules going into it. So, it's not flawless, but I still have a great time with it. I still think it's a really exceptional experience for a game.
Yeah.
All right. Well, that will wrap up this week's list. We'll be getting into our top 11 through 20 next week, and hope you enjoy it. If you like the show and want to interact with us, you can find us on Blue Sky. You can find us on Facebook, specifically find our Facebook group. We've got a great community out there that's interacting and posting questions and posting pictures all the time. We have got a great board game arena community, over 330 members out there that are starting up new games and playing games with us. And we are doing something special right now, in that with this series, we're actually putting the video version of it out on YouTube. So if you're interested in actually seeing us chat with each other, you get a slightly less well-edited version, but you get to actually watch us chat about these games. So give that a try if that's of interest to you. If people like it enough, maybe we'll keep doing it. Maybe we won't. Depends on how lazy we get.